Hello and welcome to the Evercade Retreat. Gene Joke here, and today I'm adding the Sword of Ianna from the Home Computer Heroes Collection 1 to my ever-growing list where I try and rank every Evercade game ever. The Sword of Ianna is developed by Retroworks and essentially is a homebrew title originally for the ZX Spectrum but later ported to other systems, including the MSX2, which is the version included for the Evercade, and is currently the only MSX2 game on the Evercade. In the game you control a barbarian called Jarkum, who is chosen by the goddess Ianna to help combat the rising darkness and evil. So far so very Lord of the Rings, and well, that's enough for this video. I'm not going to do a plot deep dive, not that it's a massively deep plot mind you, but there is enough of a plot for a fantasy hack and slash cinematic platformer. And as I use the words hack and slash and you control a barbarian in a fantasy setting, you're probably thinking this might be something like Rastan, which, yeah, visually there's some similarities, but the gameplay is much more like Prince of Persia. Go charging in, hacking and slashing at your enemies, and you'll probably get killed fairly quickly. And you'll definitely be very unsatisfied with the controls, because an outright straightforward action game this is not. The controls take a little bit of adjusting to. In essence, you have two control methods. A combat mode where you pull out your sword, use directions in conjunction with button presses to do your various attacks. In traversal mode, it's all about navigating the environment and occasionally picking up items. If you can do it in Prince of Persia, chances are you can do it in this game. But the combat is definitely superior to that of Prince of Persia, with more depth and, well, more moves to be perfectly honest. But much like Prince of Persia, when you first get started it does feel clunky to control. But before long you'll find the controls start clicking with you and you'll be having zero difficulties at all, and perhaps even quite enjoying the controls. Once you get used to the controls, what follows is an epic fantasy adventure that was far larger than I'd expected. As I mentioned earlier, this game started life on the ZX Spectrum. And while the ZX Spectrum was known for many things, large action-based games probably wasn't one of them. In fact, most games involving platforming and action tend to be quite short, with the gameplay being prolonged by intense difficulty or awkward controls. Realistically, I'd assume that you'd be able to finish Sword of Ianna within half an hour or maybe an hour at the most. But what you get is a sizable fantasy adventure which could well take you over 4 hours, possibly a fair bit more, at least on your first playthrough. During that time you'll have to contend with various different enemies, puzzles and traps, but there are potions and weapon upgrades to help you along your way. On the graphical front things are quite decent, especially when you consider its origins. This does very much look like the Spectrum version, just much more colourful, as on the Spectrum it's pretty much monochrome. Personally, I really like the look of it. I think a lot of that is nostalgia speaking, having a lot of fond memories on the Spectrum, and although this is more colourful, it utterly screams Spectrum despite that. Jarkum is rather well animated, especially considering the game's origins. The sound effects are fairly limited, but they're functional. The music is definitely very atmospheric, but I think it really works for the game. I really like the music, but I don't know if it'd have such broad appeal, but yeah, I just found it really suited the vibe the game was trying to achieve, even if it's not something that I'd ever put in my playlist. Now, as I mentioned, it's originally developed for the ZX Spectrum, and I think it's in 2017. It's a game I was aware of but I'd never played, and when it was announced to be coming to the Evercade I was quite excited to give it a try. It is essentially the nearest we'll get to a ZX Spectrum game until we actually get a ZX Spectrum game, and it tickles that nostalgia gland for me. But beyond that, I'd say overall it's a very pleasant surprise. I'd heard good things about it, but I was really surprised at just how good the game is. Now, I've always been a huge fan of cinematic platformers, from the original Prince of Persia to Blackthorn or Abe's Odyssey and many others since, whether they're 2D or 3D. And Sword of Ianna has quickly become one of my favourite cinematic platformers. Maybe it's that Spectrum nostalgia, maybe it's being a fan of films like Conan the Barbarian, but something about this game really clicked with me. And I can't exactly put my finger on what it is. Maybe it is simply that it's very much up my street and tickles all the right nostalgia bones. Whatever it is, it's one of my favourite games on the Evercade, and to place it on my overall ranking list of every Evercade game ever, I would have to place it above Loops but below Legacy of Kain Soul Reaver, making it my second favourite game on the system that I've ranked so far. Now I know part of this is very much a me thing, and I doubt many people would have it quite so high, but I do believe it's a genuinely good game that many people would rank quite highly as long as they get on with cinematic platformers. But anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.